On this episode of Forge and Anvil, the CDC has put out official guidelines for people who identify as trans and non-binary to chest feed. Is this the end of the CDC's credibility, or was it already gone? Next, we'll talk about how the movie Sound of Freedom has been smeared by corporate news outlets, which begs the question, why are they so against exposing child traffickers? We'll also discuss Tucker's latest interview with Russell Brand and Tucker's claim that J6 was filled with federal agents. Beyond this, we may spend some time discussing lizard people on planes and cocaine in the White House, if time allows. All this and more, so stick around. I am joined by two first-time guests tonight and hosts of the Conspiracy Pilled podcast, Abby Libby and PJ Williams. So, Abby, we'll start with you. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, I'm Abby.
Welcome in.
Solid.
PJ,
I wanted-
seasoned podcaster that.
Yeah.
Seasoned podcaster, deer in the headlights. No, I thanks for having us. This is the greatest news week ever. I just listening to your intro there, I was like, yes, we've got lizard people, cocaine, chest feeding, all the greatest stuff. Yeah, I'm introduction. I'm PJ Williams, new Conspiracy Pilled. I get a little unhinged. And I'm drinking whiskey, so I'm ready for it.
Oh boy.
Excellent. Well, welcome both of you. And as always, I'm joined by regular co-host Michael Aper.
Howdy, friends. I'm a
Nice to meet you.
God-fearing seminarian. I want to restore the righteousness of God to the people of God. So let's do it one conspiracy at a time.
Yes.
Excellent.
I really wanted it to be like an Alcoholics Anonymous, like, hi, Michael.
We'll get there at the end of the night,
Abby.
I'm sure.
Is that what you were going for, Abby, and we dropped the ball on you?
Yeah,
We so did.
So sorry.
We so did.
I'm out of here,
And
you guys.
I see a lot of you on Rumble, so thank you for joining in. We really appreciate it. We've been pushing Rumble pretty hard, but for some reason, we still get the majority of our chatters joining in on YouTube. So if I forget any of you on Rumble, I apologize. I'm going to do my best to watch it tonight, but welcome in. Appreciate you all being there. Feel free to send in any hot takes or questions all throughout the night. We'll go ahead and jump into our first story. So this is from the Post Millennial. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention has published on its website guidance for people who identify as trans and non-binary on how to chest feed infants. The CDC's website now has information on how to feed children for biological women who had their breasts removed as part of gender reassignment surgeries and for biological men taking hormones in order to grow breasts. In the CDC website section, Infant and Young Child Feeding Toolkit, under Health Equity Considerations, it stated that transgender and non-binary individuals may give birth and breastfeed or feed at the chest feed. The agency added that the gender identity or expression of transgender individuals is different from their sex at birth, noting that the gender identity of non-binary gendered individuals does not fit neatly into either man or woman. Under the website's breastfeeding section discussing the breastfeeding for those who have undergone surgeries, the agency used the term chest feeding. Additionally, the health agency wrote, can transgender patients who have had breast surgery breastfeed or chest feed their infants? The response was yes, adding an explanation that some transgender parents who have had breast/top surgery may wish to breastfeed or chest feed, a term used by some transgender and non-binary parents, their infants. Healthcare providers working with these families should be familiar with medical, emotional, and social aspects of gender transitions to provide optimal family-centered care and meet the nutritional needs of the infant. The CDC also stated that transgender parents may need help with maximizing milk production, supplementing with pasteurized donor human milk or formula, medication to introduce lactation or avoiding medications that inhibit lactation, suppressing lactation for those choosing not to breastfeed or chest feed, and finding appropriate lactation management support, peer support, and or emotional support. The Daily Mail reported that the recommendations apply to biological men who, after taking hormone drugs, can produce their own breast milk, and that the FDA has warned that one of these drugs, dopiridone, I'm probably mispronouncing that, but take that as it will, can pass into breast milk in small amounts and can sometimes give babies an irregular heartbeat as a result. Dr. Jane Orient, executive director of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, told the outlet The CDC has a responsibility to talk about the health risks, but they have been derelict in doing that. She added, we have no idea what the long-term effects on the child will be if trans parents are using all kinds of off-label hormones. So there's obviously a lot to unpack there. My initial thoughts to this story, to me, I just think this is just further the further eroding of our institutions, which have already done a great job of throwing their credibility off the cliff. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Abby, we'll start with you, but what was your initial reaction to this article?
What I really want to know is, PJ, when your daughter was born, at what point did you decide you weren't going to chest feed?
Yeah,
That's a really big decision as a father.
I wanted to have that bond with my daughter, but it was just, time constraints and, reality constraints, things like that. Just little things like reality. Did you guys catch that part in the middle there where it was like, yeah, of course they can chest feed as long as they supplement it with real milk.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you can qualify anything like that. Like, you can chest feed as long as you realize that when you're done and the baby has nothing but pus from your disgusting wounds, then you just give it real milk.
Yeah.
So of course, like, they qualified it in a way that they're not wrong, but it's disgusting. Yeah.
I think the part that people aren't talking about, it's being framed as these people want to be mothers so badly that they are willing to pretend. But I think it's more than that. It's a kink. And we proved that on the last image that was floating around. That guy had a confirmed other posts of using little clips on his nipples because that was his thing. So like at some point we have to just say it outright that they're using their babies for these purposes, and it's despicable.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, what was your initial reaction to this?
We spend a lot of time, it seems, harping on Romans chapter 1 on this podcast because it seems wildly relevant to our culture right now. And in there, there's commentary Paul's writing about exchanging the truth for a lie and worshiping the created thing instead of the creator. This is almost, it takes the next step into the unnatural lusts where it's not even it's not even worshiping the created thing. It's creating something to be worshipped, and even further form of idolatry where, it's not enough to worship the image of women, but we need to mar women and make it out so that men can become women, and as if it's good or beneficial to a child to have the opportunity to chest feed on a manipulated, scarred, broken up chest, whether male or female.
Right.
Doesn't this go like right in hand with idol worship in the other way too, which is the child sacrifice part of idol worship? Because that's all this is. This is sacrificing children to worship the created idol of man as woman or whatever, like Ishtar image that they've created.
Validating an ideology by putting children's health on the line, which has been the case for a long time. Look at abortion. That's not even something we can argue against at this point. It's been right in our face for a long time, and now this is just another step that inevitably people will either ignore again, or it's another straw that might break a camel's back.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I would love to sit here and pretend that everyone that is participating in these acts, are just individuals who need help but mean well. And, I'm sure that many fall underneath that category. But to Abby's point, I wanted to actually play this video that Riley Gaines put out just recently. And I'll have you guys react to it. So here we go.
The longest time I refrained from posting on TikTok. I'm the swimmer who competed against Leah Thomas, who has been outspoken on why men should not be competing in women's sports or changing in our locker rooms. But after what I saw today on Twitter, I will be blasting my opinions and my views on all of my social media platforms because this is sick. And I think a true testament of where, as Americans, we are today. Okay, so I came across this picture yesterday on Twitter, which is very clearly a man who is claiming the identity of a woman and breastfeeding a child. After seeing that picture, I very quickly took to my Twitter to call that what it is, which is sexual abuse of a child. But I didn't realize to what degree until I saw this. In the following photos, you will see the same man who was breastfeeding the child actively using nipple clamps to fulfill his sexual fetish. Here is another one. And here is another one. And here is the Instagram caption from the same man on his Instagram profile where he wanted to check on how hard you can tug on the nipple clamps. So I guess what I'm wondering is, how can any sane human being see this man posing with this child, obviously sucking on his nipple, now seeing what he engages in privately, and not see this baby as an erotic prop for this man with a sick fetish? It is sexual abuse of a child, bottom line. And all of this to say that in America, we are normalizing pedophilia. Let me repeat that. We are normalizing pedophilia. And we're normalizing this behavior in the guise of human rights, but sexual abuse is not a human right for anyone. I hate to even be spreading this message, but I think people need to see it. It's up to us to stand up against evil, which is exactly what this is. This is a battle of moral versus evil. The smirk on this man's face says it all.
And there we have it. So, I don't know, PJ, what's wrong with people coming up against nipple clamps all of a sudden? I don't understand.
What's wrong with people? She said one thing wrong in her video. She said he does this privately. He doesn't do this privately. He does it very publicly.
Yeah.
So he publicizes his fetishes, and then he publicizes his abuse of a child because he knows. Did you notice he was wearing a mask in the thing too? Talk about CDC misinformation. Like, this guy is a CDC poster child for misinformation or disinformation or lies or whatever you want to call it. Wearing a mask, publicly abusing a child, and because they have the credentialed, backing of the CDC, like, we're just fringe lunatics for pointing it out.
Naturally.
Yeah.
It's astounding to me that the CDC has any credibility still. and that was, even in the chat, someone was saying that on Rumble, is that we don't believe in the CDC, and that ship has sailed a long time ago. But for a lot of people, even people who try to have a sound mind, they still somehow are caught up in that. And there are even people in my community at the seminary here who are masking, are concerned about COVID things in a way that I can't quite understand. It seems like some sort of damage security blanket sort of ideological hindrance that they can't move on in life. And to think that anyone would say, oh, the CDC says that men can have children suck their nipples and that's cool. No, it's really not cool.
I think for a lot of Christians, they weaponized our compassion
Mm-hmm.
and our empathy. And I think for women especially, that the left is really, really good at talking to women and giving us a good reason to go along with them. And oftentimes the right isn't good at saying the correct thing to kind of adjust off of that compassion, because you get somebody in compassion, and then if the response is a non-compassionate response, if you can't say, hey, your compassion is misdirected and it's hurting somebody, if you can't hit it at the root of it, then you're not going to pull somebody who is genuinely, for good reasons, supporting bad things. You're not going to pull them off of it because they have the moral high ground.
Yeah, it's true. They've been telling a better story for a long time. And unfortunately, the left uses a lot of manipulation, and they have a strong grip on the creative arts as well, which doesn't help our case. Luckily we've seen some cracks start to form in their hold, but
Yes.
But man, my goodness, they have been telling a better story probably since at least the 60s, and which is usually where so many people on our side of the aisle tend to point to as kind of the start of the downhill slide into this utter mess that we find ourselves in now. But of course, I believe it didn't start in the 60s, but that's definitely a big turning point with that, what many refer to as kind of a cultural revolution with that.
Yeah, I think that's when people noticed it, but I'd place it even back in the teens, like the 19-teens was when it really, at least the communist propaganda started really weaponizing niceness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this whole thing is.
This is
Go ahead.
This is something that bothers me about conservatism, or the conservative space, especially on at least on Twitter, is that we recognize that women vote Democratic, and we don't recognize that it is a good thing about women that is being weaponized to a bad end. And instead it's just women suck, they're all Democrats. It's well, okay, you're bad at talking to women. You don't have the female vote because you're bad at talking to women about your issues.
This is the problem with the reactionary thing, though, right? Is the reaction is here's a bunch of fat, purple-haired lesbians. So we have to be the opposite of that. So let's put a bunch of, big-breasted bimbos in American striped bikinis.
Right.
And we all of a sudden are pushing the sexual revolution as hard as the left is. But we're doing it on, we're reactionary. We're doing the equal and opposite, but it's not equal. And it's opposite, but it's not equal. Or it's equally as much the sexual revolution. And what you were saying about compassion, and if the left has a compassionate argument, the right very often will go, well, let's be the complete opposite of the compassionate argument.
Yeah. We don't care.
That's not the problem. The problem is not the compassion. The problem is that the lies. You can be compassionate in truth, but it's just so reactionary.
With the immigration issue, my compassion was dialed into that. I was like, these people just want to come over here and work and support their families. And it wasn't until someone is like, Abby, they're driving around without driver's licenses. Illegal immigration breaks the fabric of our society. At each, and I was like, oh, that means they can't get proper medical care. That means that if they're not properly integrated in this, and so once you gave me a reason for my compassion to switch sides.
Well, the compassion argument on the other side is with it just being an open border, that's allowing them to be trafficked. They're not non-traced people, right? So you can use the compassionate argument in the correct way instead of I hate Mexicans, they're stealing our jobs.
Exactly.
There's an actual compassionate response to be like, no, you know what's worse is this is not compassionate to the people who have spent their time working to get into this country. It's not compassionate to the taxpayers. And the best case of all is it's really not compassionate to the children who are being trafficked by these coyotes. That's the main thing coming across the border. It's not, people looking for jobs. It's drugs, it's sex trafficking, it's all of these things. So much. And when you point that out, people like AOC wouldn't stand up and clap for we stopped sex trafficking at the border.
Oh no.
And that's how you make the compassion argument though. You pointed AOC and you're like, hey, Donald Trump went up there and said, hey, we stopped X amount of sex traffickers by having a stricter border. And she sat there with her arms crossed. Now you look compassionate and she looks like an a-hole, but there's not enough people that I think that are smart enough to fight it that way. Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, on the chat on YouTube, Shara Joel said, I don't know if I agree with that. A lot of women are just stupid and more interested in killing their babies than any other issue. Look at all the women saying trans women are real women. So I don't know if you guys want to respond to that.
I mean,
I don't think that's the majority of women.
That is not the way to win the female vote. If that's and that's unfortunately more and more, this is the attitude toward women. Women are just stupid and awful and evil. And yeah, sure. Some women are and some men are. It's so silly to pretend that one of the genders is just definitionally worse. And it's just based on this statistic of the way that we vote, and the way that we vote has to do with messaging. So,
well, the argument there is that women are supporting this, which is just anecdotal anyway. But if you look at who's driving it, it's mostly men who are transitioning to women for things like sports and for things like kink. So to say that it's one sex and not the other, it's just not true. But yeah. I think some of the loudest anti-trans people in the world are women right now.
Yes. The loudest trans
people like Riley Gaines.
The loudest trans people are men. The loudest anti-trans people are women.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because I think that even on our show, we have many guests who have talked about the problem of feminism, because I think most people on the conservative side of the aisle recognize that feminism has had problems, because feminism gone, unchecked is a lot of where these idea pathogens have come about. But at the same time, to your point, Abby, it's not like it's there's not a bunch of women that are going into male sports and are taking all these titles.
I wonder why.
So at this point, it's like, even if you want to say that feminism is what led us to trans ideology, well, at some point we do also have to go and go to the men and put the blame at their feet of, well, even if you want to make the argument that feminism is what caused this ideology to crop up, well, now you all picked it up and ran with it.
It's funny to me because the secret patriarchy that runs a society that's evil and right wing, if you look at it, it's like, well, what has the left wing done with feminism? They've told women, hey, it's actually freeing and wonderful and great for you to sell your body to men and become a sex object. So the result of feminism is men using women as objects. It's OnlyFans. It's sex work is work, and or whatever what's the phrase? Is that what it is? Sex work is work or whatever?
Something like that.
Yeah. Anyway.
But isn't that empowering, PJ?
It is funny because women said, don't lead us, don't take responsibility. We want to be just like you. We want to be on the same level. Feminists said that. And then men were like, great, we won't. And then you can't reverse that without men saying, actually, we are going to take responsibility and we are going to lead. You can't have it both ways. You can't blame women for everything and be the leaders of society. If you want to reverse feminism, you do actually have to take responsibility for leading us out of it. And you can't just blame women for everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's going back to the garden,
Right.
Eve was the one that took the bite, but Adam was the one that stood by and said nothing.
How about you bite that? Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
God, this woman you gave me.
Yeah.
You're real messed up there.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I've always said that the original sin is not Eve biting the apple. It's Adam abdicating responsibility.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people miss that. It's like Adam was there and he let her, eat the apple. He was like, yeah, you go ahead and try this. So I actually think the original sin wasn't from Eve. I think it was from Adam, but I don't know.
That's how God treats it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Renaissance Man said, maybe I picked the wrong moment to come into this conversation. That's wonderful. Will does a lot of work really getting men to man up.
Yeah.
So, Michael, do we have any? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just saying a lot of these sort of topics of like, what is truth? And we'd like to think that truth is, a lot of the conversation that we've been having so far is kind of like ethical truth and what is morally true. But we've seen in these debates what is scientifically true and empirically true. And that when it going back to the original story, talking about transgender men and women chest feeding, I want to know what is the supposed backing of truth scientifically, because part of the reason, and I would presume the motivation behind wanting to breastfeed your child, aside from providing sustenance for the child, is the intimacy that promotes as well. But the intimacy is largely connected to the pheromones that the areola puts out from the nipple, and the oxytocin that's exchanged between a mother and a child during breastfeeding. And that just, to my knowledge, cannot happen with the chemically induced methods that are being suggested by the CDC. So why is this something that the CDC is even taking a stance on? Because it doesn't seem to be a actually medically viable option, aside from just giving them the validation that they can lactate to some degree.
Because you're arguing from science and they're arguing from scientism. That's the issue here.
Yeah. Well,
they're arguing from this religious belief in authority. They're not actually arguing from data. So even though I don't think that
CDC has been doing all through COVID as well. So.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people misunderstand this because the left has labeled themselves the party of science for so long that we actually believe it. And it's just not true. They're not the party of science. They're the party of we have created. It's like a Trojan horse. Like they came in with like real science and then they used that to gain this like Pope-like, authority to people like Dr. Fauci. So it's really just about the 2 + 2 = 5. It's not about, in that case, it's not about math. It's about making sure you answer what you're told to answer. It's not even that it's 5. It's that it's whatever the party tells you it is. So in this case, it's not, here's the data. Here's why 2 + 2 = 5. It's you have to say it's 5. And if we say it's 6 tomorrow, you have to say it's 6.
Because so many people seem to accept the CDC as scientific evidence and accept the narrative that the left is somehow more scientifically driven. I think it's important to speak that part out loud and say there's no evidential benefit to the child in any of this that's being promoted by chest feeding from a transgender parent. That's just if there is, I'm sure there's people who would light up the chat if they were listening to us, which I'm sure they're not. But
we all know there isn't, though. I mean, you don't have to be a scientist to understand this. Like everybody instinctually knows that it's not scientific.
I don't know if everyone does instinctually know it. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's coming from the CDC and they're the authority on
Well,
disease
then
control,
I guess
which
that's
has
what I'm
nothing to do
saying
with
is they're
this,
making the same mistake that everybody's making. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying you're making this. I'm just saying, like,
No, I
generally
understand,
speaking, the problem is they actually believe it's about science and it's not about scientism. If they understood the difference between science and science TM, then it wouldn't be such an issue, I think.
Which is precisely why I wanted to bring it up in this format, so that any viewer who doesn't get that by now, I hope that it's clearly portrayed.
The data on masks was out decades before. I mean, shoot, it was out 100 years before, and then they retested it over and over and over for the last 100 years. The data on masks. I mean, even just like the microbe size or whatever you want to call it, the virus size was smaller than the holes in the mask. Like, we all knew that masks didn't work from long before we pushed it. So it's just the same thing. It's a religious belief. It's show us that you are following the party, and it has nothing to. They don't even have to explain it in science to people. They just tell them, believe this or else. It's I don't know. It's weird. Sorry.
It's funny that we think this is new, and this has been the case with science for generations. It's been the case with so much of what science says is settled, or science pushes as far as what we're teaching in schools, or this and that. It's been well, the science says it, so you're an idiot if you disagree. It's been an abusive thing to do, a controlling thing.
Yeah. The Renaissance man said feelings have been scientifically proven to be hurt by saying no to woke people. And once upon a reset said scientism equals Luciferianism. It all comes down to mocking God when we peel back the layers.
100%.
It's a religion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is. It is. Michael, keep a watch on Rumble. I know we've got a lot of Rumble chats popping off. If there's any that you want to throw out, feel free. I know I'm looking down at my phone because it's a lot easier than going to a new tab here, but got a lot of great people in the chat. Not for sale says boo Rumble over YouTube. Nana C is in the chat. Males cannot breastfeed. Yep. Hicktown Honey, welcome in. Fantasauce 12, Kelsey, Real Truth Cactus, Ray K, Nana C. Thank you all for joining in. We will get to your chats. Nana C says, as Christians, we are to tell the truth. We tell it in love, yes, but we speak it out loud. Base Babe says, preach. Yeah. So
the idea that we should lie to people in the name of compassion is really unfortunate. It's kind of crept into the church.
Ephesians chapter 5, verse 11 says, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them.
Yep.
Which is precisely why I want to point out.
Ephesians 5.
Ephesians 5. Yep.
Ephesians 5:11.
5:11. I gotta save that.
Yeah. It's been one of the mottos of this podcast.
That whole paragraph is good. It continues with some quality stuff as well.
There's some pretty good stuff in that book, the Bible, I hear.
I gotta read that more.
Highly recommended. Top of the list.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Awesome. Well, let's go on to our next story. So this is also from the Post Millennial. Rolling Stone, Washington Post praised pro-pedophile movie Cuties, attacked anti-child sex trafficking movie Sound of Freedom. Wonder why.
Yeah.
The Washington Post and Rolling Stone both came out criticizing the anti-child sex trafficking film Sound of Freedom after its release. Both also praised another movie, Cuties, which depicts a twerking dance crew made up of little girls. The articles that both the Washington Post and Rolling Stone released about Sound of Freedom accused the film of being associated with QAnon conspiracy theories. The film is based on a portion of Tim Ballard's life and the beginnings of him forming the organization Operation Underground Railroad. Rolling Stone said that actor Jim Caviezel, who depicts Ballard in the film, has given speeches and interviews about evildoers who are harvesting the blood of children. The Post pointed out that the film has been promoted on QAnon message boards and plays into the theory that global elites are kidnapping children, having sex with them, and harvesting their blood. Ballard and Caviezel recently went on an interview with Jordan Peterson. Ballard also addressed this and explained that the blood and organ harvesting is very real. He has posted a video showing a raid where this occurred in Western Africa. He continued and said, so I might say something like that, and they connected to something a QAnon person says about a celebrity who must be doing this too, but there's no evidence to back that. They make a false connection there. Other reports detail the practice. Another report from The Guardian also made similar claims about the Sound of Freedom, yet it has a report from 2015 about a charity that was formed to prevent child sacrifice and blood rituals in Uganda. The report said 10,317 youth in Uganda, representing every district in the country, confirmed they have heard of a child being sacrificed. The Post and Rolling Stone, aside from attempting to link Sound of Freedom to QAnon, praised the movie Cuties, in which little girls are sexualized in a twerk dancing crew. One statement from Rolling Stone said the backlash at Cuties was just part of a tactic that has its roots in conspiracy theorist circles, such as the QAnon community. The article alleges that the backlash to the film was part of the far-right's obsession with pedophilia. Another piece from Rolling Stone called it a coming-of-age movie that was caught in a culture war. The piece says it was not a salacious bit of pedobait, but instead it was its polar opposite that points out what happens when children get too involved with sexuality. The Post called Cuties an unflinching look at what it means to be a preteen girl. It is the kind of story that isn't told well very often and deserves to be told more. The Post article continued. Whose gaze does the camera represent? How is this scene supposed to make us feel? These are the kind of nuanced discussions that art is meant to encourage. The article went on discussing explicit scenes in the film. The article says that the point of the camera angle in the scene is to show how unhealthy adults could perceive what's happening on screen, while healthy adults will be shocked. So my thought, more just my question, is why the intense hatred towards this film in particular? I mean, it's just odd. It's not like we've ever uncovered any hidden conspiracy of elites trafficking children, flying on private jets and,
Renaissance of Men,
past president or something.
Flight logs.
Well, you see, we caught the one guy who ever did that crime.
That's
ever.
right.
That's
ever.
right.
He's the only guy that ever did it. And we
Yeah,
caught
he's
him.
dead. He's dead.
One man.
Yeah.
One man job.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the film?
No, and I'm going to soon.
Please do.
Been working a
Is it
ton,
good?
but yeah.
Yeah.
I heard.
I think I'm the only one who's seen it here, and I actually heard about it Saturday morning and immediately bought a ticket, and my wife and I went and saw it on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I think genuinely every person in the free world, any bodily able individual should go see that film by whatever means necessary. I think nothing negative can come from it except for people misunderstanding what the purpose of it is. And it's made very clear by watching the film.
Yeah, especially if you listen to Caviezel's interviews. Abby got it exactly right, though. This cuts against their narrative. That's the whole problem with this, is that the narrative was set up. Okay, we don't want to give up Epstein. We knew about him in 2009. ABC fired reporters and blocked stories and all this stuff. And then when it finally was just, they couldn't deny it anymore, they weaponized it. They couldn't deny it, so they spun it. And the spin was that Epstein was the only man that ever committed this crime, and we caught him, and isn't that wonderful? Pat ourselves in the back. Go home. It's over. This was the only sex trafficking ring in human history. And, look at us. We are exposing it. We're the good guys. He's bad. He's done. And they hate that people didn't believe them, and they went, hold the phone. If this guy was doing this for this many years and the media knew about him, and he was let out of jail after soliciting a 15-year-old with like a slap on the wrist, less than a year, and I don't even know if it was jail. It wasn't even prison. It was like jail, and I think he had weekends off. So people are like, yeah, no, this can't be the only person. And they hate that narrative because it's true. And if this article doesn't make you believe that all of the elites are in on it, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
When all the elites and all of the media are saying, isn't it bad that people are trying to expose this awful, heinous crime while they're praising pedophilia? I mean, I don't even have to I feel like that's evidence in and of itself that the conspiracy is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Renaissance of Men said Ghislaine Maxwell has also been caught and convicted and memory hold. He said Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of 5 charges for doing what? I mean, she doesn't have a client list.
Selling children to no one.
To no one.
She sold children to no one. Can I talk about this QAnon claim real quick?
Please do, because you guys are the conspiracy theory experts. Okay. We just dabble,
have so much to say on this, and I don't want to cut off anybody else because I could go on.
Real quick, I have to ask you, because you're probably going to potentially answer this in your rant, but I want to make sure that I ask it up front. Where did it come from? Because I did not hear about any of it until there was people on the right being associated with it, being accused of being associated with it.
Where did QAnon come from? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
CNN. No, like legitimately, I'm not kidding. QAnon was on these 8chan and 4chan Reddit boards to like 9 people. And then CNN decides to ask Donald Trump about QAnon. That was my first time hearing about it. They're like, oh, the whole right wing is
in the debate. That was my
this
first
whole
time.
QAnon thing. And I'm like, who the hell is QAnon? And all my friends that are really into politics are like, who the hell is QAnon? The reason I bring up QAnon is because this, again, is further proof that it's what I've been saying it is for years. It's a massive psyop that was created by the left. And it's just obvious. This is how it works. QAnon points to true things to get people interested. Hey, the elites are trafficking children. Look at Jeffrey Epstein. And we all go, oh, this is obviously true. These flight logs are still blocked. Ghislaine Maxwell went to prison for selling kids to nobody. Weinstein, we knew about the flight logs in 2009. I knew personally that Bill Clinton was on that plane over 30 times before the world knew who Epstein was, because I was paying attention to this stuff. One of the craziest claims of Alex Jones, it just happened to be entirely 100% true. So it works by giving you something that's true, and then people who are compassionate and interested and want to find the truth are buying into it because they're going, oh, wow, this thing is telling me the truth. And then it goes on to trust the plan, don't do anything, sit at home on your ass, and wait for Donald Trump to come back and take the White House. And I'm still looking forward to August 2021 when he comes back and takes the White House. I don't know if you guys are looking forward to it. But I'm just on pins and needles. But people still believe it, and that's the problem. And now they're using it as a cudgel to say, well, this part of QAnon that was true is linked in with all this other stuff that wasn't true. And therefore, if you talk about the true thing, you also believe all the non-true things, and you're a crazy, awful conspiracy theorist. And they literally have used, that's what I said they would do years ago. I'm like, they're going to use this as a cudgel that anybody who wants to talk about this very real issue of elites and adrenochrome and child sex trafficking and all of this stuff, they're going to be linked in with the people who bought into Lynn Wood and Donald Trump's really in the White House, and it's just some secret ploy. And they're doing it now. Literally, Jim Caviezel has not once said QAnon. He actually, in that article you just read, I'm trying to remember the director's name. He's like, yeah, I don't believe that stuff about the celebrities and this and that and the other. I believe the thing that's real. And now they're using this to attack a literal true story. Like, that's the thing that the left doesn't get. They're calling it a fantasy. This is a true story. This is a movie based on a true story of events that really happened, but it's QAnon conspiracy. Like, if they, and that's the brilliance of it, is that they can literally take something that's true, and because they've made you associate it with BS, they can make you believe the true thing isn't true. That's why I think QAnon's a giant psyop.
I've been suspicious of that.
That was my first thought as well when I saw articles saying that it was being affiliated with QAnon in any capacity. And then I went and saw the movie, and I asked around for people who were more aware of the production of the film already. And what I've come to think, the only connection that I can figure out is that, yeah, it does in fact have to do with child pedophilic sex trafficking.
Well, no, there's that
QAnon at its origin. But then the thing with QAnon is that it dives off the deep end with, just like you said, sitting around waiting for Donald Trump to come in and flood the swamp and take care of everything. Well, that's clearly not happening.
Right.
And no, you just gotta trust the plan.
To happen, great.
Trust the plan. Don't do anything.
Yeah.
Trust the plan. That's why it's a psyop. No, the only other part of the movie that really linked in with QAnon is where Donald Trump rode in on a pterodactyl and killed Joe Biden in the end. that part was a little on the nose. But
that was the after credit scene, wasn't it?
Yeah. You had to stick around. So
yeah. No, it really is an incredible film. I would highly recommend anyone to see it. And even Kel17C in the chat on Rumble mentions that Angel Studios has a pay it forward method, so that if you can't even afford to see it, Angel Studios will pay for your ticket to see it based on people who have already paid.
That's amazing.
For individuals who can't afford. So it's not a matter of, like, if you don't see it, it's because you're either ignorant or complacent.
So, you know what's funny about this, being in the conspiracy world, is the other conspiracy that is being pushed by the QAnon people right now is that they're all part of the cabal. Jim Caviezel, the director, and this whole movie is some awful, terrible thing. They can't explain why that it's bad. They're just saying it's bad because Jim Caviezel scratched his eyebrow one time, and that was some Illuminati symbol or something like that. And I'm just like, for me, it's like, I don't care about all these pictures and things like that. Like, what is the effect of the film? Is the effect of the film that people are waking up to the realities of sex trafficking, which is supposed to be the QAnon thing anyway? And I just find it funny. There's so many people who have been so psyoped and lied to for so long that they're like taking these conspiracies to the next level. And it's, I don't know, you call it like a bell curve or whatever, but it's like this movie's BS on the left, you know, like the left mainstream media. Then it's like, oh no, this is like good. And then it's like, actually, it's all big like conspiracy for some reason that we can't point out. I find that. So it's again, it just cuts against the QAnon narrative that the same people I know who are really into QAnon are now bashing the film. It's odd. I don't know.
I have 2 questions about the movie for people who have watched it. The first one is it a good movie? Like, we know the message is good. Is it a good movie?
It's a very high production quality. Yeah, it's really, really well done. Better than, I would say, even other really successful more Christian/conservative films that have come out recently. Okay. I think it was a better quality than Jesus Revolution, and I really enjoyed Jesus Revolution as well.
Okay. No. The second question is, it's a really heavy topic, obviously. Is there enough catharsis in the story to kind of offset how dark it is?
It's not a comfortable film.
Okay.
It's, there are moments of levity, and there are characters who are written to create a little more wiggle room to be less intense.
Okay.
But by and large, I mean, I tend to be a more sensitive man. I wept probably 6 times throughout the film, and during the credits, I could barely keep myself together. And that's just my experience. But it's the type of thing where it's not comfortable, but it really shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you're comfortable learning about the full extent of pedophilic sex trafficking, then maybe you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror and figure out what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And maybe those individuals.
Whenever we've done a deep dive on this stuff, it's like I feel like I need 3 weeks of doing very fun conspiracy topics because it's so heavy when you dive into the research, and it should be. You shouldn't walk away from it unchanged. You shouldn't walk away from it and just not feel like it's a gut punch, because you know it when you look into it, you know the stuff's real, and like that's the hard part about it.
And
Chris?
like the MSN article calling it whatever, like a boomer fever dream sort of thing, as if the movie itself is portraying something so crazy, wildly out of reality. You know, the statistics of the film are backed up, and even Tim Ballard has a lot of credential through the work that he's done and his participation in the Homeland Security efforts prior to him leaving that position. So yeah, the statistics are verified, but also if it happens to one child,
it's too much.
That should be a huge problem to every single human.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that they're painting it as like it's our fantasy.
Right.
As if we fantasize about taking down. I mean, I guess we do kind
it's
of.
talking about the rights of obsession with pedophilia. It's like,
what's bad? What if it is a fantasy? What's bad about fantasizing in a world where we actually do something about the sex traffickers and take them out?
Yeah.
Like if that's a fantasy, then sign me up. I'm all for shooting sex traffickers in the face.
Yes.
Like good fantasy.
Good fantasy. I want to say Chris is over in the chat. Thanks for showing up. He just had his first
kid. Yeah, congrats on that, Chris.
Congratulations.
I saw that. That's awesome. Chris was on the show quite a while back now, but yeah, we love Chris.
He's a good guy.
Absolutely. Once Upon a Reset said, humanity is being force-fed the red pill, aka the false light awakening, and the dark cabal being exposed is all a construct. Don't know what to make of that.
Can you read that one more time?
Yeah.
Humanity is being force-fed the red pill, aka the false light awakening, and the dark cabal being exposed is all a construct.
That's a question I have had. There are some things where, like, sometimes it seems like we're winning, and I'm like, are we? Or are they just giving us enough? Well, yeah, just giving us Epstein, and then
what he's talking about is kind of the Epstein thing, right? Yeah. Right. So to some degree, I think he's right. I guess I'd have to ask further questions about it, but to some degree, there are those wins that people take, and they just go home. They're like, "Oh, we won. It's over."
Right.
It's not over. So
you should definitely celebrate the wins. Don't black pill on the wins, but don't. The conservative way of saying you've come this far and no farther. That's great, but are you really going to let them have the ground they've taken? Like, that's not.
Yeah,
we don't. Oh,
we should celebrate our wins and not rest on our laurels. I think that's exactly what
and
we
then
need
keep
to do.
pushing backward. The idea that if we defeat the march forward at pedophilia and we just hold the line right here where we're always tipping on the edge of normalizing pedophilia, that's not a good place for society to rest. We have to push it back.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, even if that's correct, let's say, that we're just doomed to lose, and they're just going to occasionally, make it look like we've won some victories as sort of a pressure relief valve. It's like, well, if that is even the case, does that mean that we just pretend to just go silently into the night and act like this stuff is okay and just stop the pushback? I mean, obviously not. We shouldn't give up on calling evil. Just because we want to be black pilled and say that no matter what we do, we're going to for sure lose. I mean, I refuse to live that way. Even if that is, if I knew that was true, and no matter what we lose, I mean, we don't lose in the end. We know that as believers, but if we lose, your eschatology really matters. I've been just meeting so many people with different eschatologies over the last year, and it's really interesting because your eschatology really does play a difference in your outlook. But regardless of your eschatology, you should still be standing up for whatever is true, beautiful, and good. And and you should be declaring your faith in Jesus Christ and be doing so boldly.
That's why we're always fighting against the black pill on our show. That's the one thing that we've made a conscious effort to not do. And it's not because we want to pretend that things are better than they are, but because there's multiple mistakes that can be made in this. It's one is thinking that we won and then it's over and you can just go home. And the other one is feeling so black pilled that you're just like, well, what's the point?
Right.
Like, what am I going to do about it? So I think it's what I was saying earlier. You have to celebrate your victories, but you can't rest on your laurels, and you have to find a way to be a happy warrior in all of this. You have to find a way. Like we've made jokes on some of the darkest episodes we've ever done because we know that we have to stay upbeat to some degree. Like we have to dive into the dark place. Actually, someone wrote a review on our show, and it was they said, I like how the show dives into the dark places but doesn't dwell there. And I think that's kind of what we've tried to hold on to.
In the chat on Rumble, Kel17C says, the black pill is not a very biblical viewpoint, but at the same time, we do know that things have to get darker before we get eternity in paradise.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also an eschatological perspective, depending on how you take that. What I might say as far as a biblical view on this, right in that same paragraph that we referenced earlier, Ephesians 5 verses 15 and 16 says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And whether you're pre-mill or all-mill or post-mill, Renaissance of Men said post-mill all day. And, I will say something that I think that everyone needs to work on regardless of your eschatology. A lot of the post-millennial individuals that I've gotten to know this year, they are some of the most engaged people, and they're the most happy warriors that I know. And a lot of that's because their eschatology really lends to that positivity because, that's just the reality of the post-millennial mindset. But whether you're premillennial or not, like, my goodness, you do have an obligation to live like the Holy Spirit is living inside you. Yeah. That needs to be evident by
the premillennial,
how you carry yourself.
Sorry, the premillennial.
Oh, did we lose Michael?
Oh no, we'll never know what he was going to say about premillennialism now. It's okay. Me? He was probably going to say something really heretical.
You're back.
He's going back. We have you. Say more words.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. You're back. You're back.
Okay. I don't know what was going on there. Anyway, as long as you can still hear me.
Yes.
The premillennial issue that I perceive is that people think that they don't need to express their outward salvation. They just hold on to their salvation. It's almost like they're bracing for impact so much that it's like every man for himself.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get raptured any day now, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We've talked about this so much where it's like I was raised at this belief that well, or not, I wasn't raised with it, but I've been around enough people with this belief that it's like, well, we're going to get raptured. So what do I care about the world? What do I care about other people? I'm like, well, in the 90s, we're going to get raptured too. Like, you don't know when it's, even if you're premillennial, you don't know when it's coming. So don't live that way.
And similarly, I think all millennials tend to lean towards complacency because it's like, we're just here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually, like, we're not moving towards a specific sequence of eschatological events. We know that Christ will come again, and when he does, that'll be cool. And that there's a complacency there's a lack of urgency where Jesus, his message is repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. And how do we interpret that? Is the kingdom of heaven being near, is that spatial? Is that temporal? Is that, there's lots of discussion and debate over these things. I think I am comfortable with a premillennial perspective from biblical interpretation. But when it comes to how we enact our holiness in walking with Christ, we can't live the way that you described just a moment ago. Of it is unbiblical to the nth degree to say, I'm going to be raptured any day now, so it doesn't really matter.
I've heard people say that they don't care about abortion because they're like, well, I'm getting saved. And it's the same type of mindset. It's disgusting.
It is
disgusting.
It absolutely deviates from every message that Christ gave about what the kingdom of heaven is. So if you presume that you're headed towards the kingdom of heaven and you deny every qualification that Christ maps out for us through his parables and his teachings, sorry, but there's a rude awakening coming. And I think the Holy Spirit needs to work in conviction on those people's hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rest of the men said, does post-mill make you based and handsome, or does being based and handsome make you post-mill? My research is ongoing.
It's ongoing.
Will, I will let you know, Will. I grew up pre-millennial, and I've heard some of the best arguments for post-millennial only this year that I've ever heard. So, if I completely flip-flop to one side over the other, I'll be sure to let you know if I get uglier or more handsome.
I definitely agree that the product for a lot of people of being pre-mill is really gross. You judge a theory, you judge a conspiracy theory, you judge a biblical interpretation by obviously the evidence first, but then often we forget to judge it by its effect on people as well. And
what do you mean by evidence first?
So, like with QAnon, you would judge the theory based on what evidence is for it or against it, but I would also judge it based on the effect believing in it has on people.
The effect is sitting around waiting for Trump to take back the White House any day.
So I would judge premillennial by first the biblical evidence that points to it, the verses that would point to it, biblical reason for believing it, but then also I would judge it by the effect that believing in it has on people.
I wanted to clarify, just because you said we judge biblical interpretation based on evidence. And oftentimes we lack evidence for biblical truth because we lack the truth in our culture. So I would say biblical interpretation stands as truth outside of our perception of evidence because we may not have the full grasp of the evidence available. But to what you're saying, there should be evidence of regeneration, of holiness in the walk of a Christian. And that's a controversial perspective because then people are like, oh, well, what if you lose your salvation? How do you backslide? Or what does that look like? And my stance is that Christ wasn't terribly concerned about that, and neither was Paul in his writings. But they're very concerned about how we live our life as one with Christ. So it really should be a non-issue if we're being the hands and feet of Christ and the church the way that we are instructed specifically to be. I'm not dismissing that as an issue or as a topic, but that shouldn't be where we get caught up. There's a lot more in the gospel than whether or not we can fall in and out of salvation. I think that's kind of a moot point in the gospel.
It's I think it's above my pay grade. Like if someone doesn't want to be saved and God wants to release them from it, like, okay, how does that impact me in any way?
Yeah, it's definitely something that many more brilliant minds have pondered. And I'm still in the midst of every day just trying to absorb more knowledge and try to just grow in my understanding of so many of these big theological concepts like eschatology. And it's it's heavy, but I wanted to jump into the Rumble chat because I saw a couple that I wanted to highlight here. Kelsey said his CIA agent is trying to silence Michael's thoughts. That was when you bailed on us, Michael. Hicktown Honey said, we want a small battle, not the war. I agree with that completely. Then Nana C33 said, there are many organizations that are fighting against human trafficking. Christine Kane's A21 is global. So is Love Justice International. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I highlighted that so that more people can be aware of some great organizations doing great works. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next story here. So this is actually from Tucker Carlson. He had an interview with Russell Brand, and he said some spicy stuff there in that interview. So Benny Johnson posted, breaking, Tucker Carlson says the chief of police at the Capitol told him that the crowd on J6 was filled with federal agents. So we'll play the clip.
And that was a tip off to me. I mean, I had no thought in my head as I watched this happen on television and in the subsequent weeks that U.S. law enforcement or military agencies had anything to do with it. That never crossed my mind. I never thought there was a false flag or anything like that. I'm not a conspiracist by temperament. I never thought that. And then I interviewed the chief of the Capitol Police, Stephen Sund, in an interview that was never aired on Fox, by the way. I was fired before it could air. I'm going to interview him again. But Stephen Sund was the totally non-political, worked for Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this was not some right-wing activist. He was the chief of the Capitol Police on January 6th. And he said, oh, yeah, that guy was filled with federal agents. What? Yes. Well, he would know, of course, because he was in charge of security at the site. So the more time has passed, now it's been, and that was a tip off to me. I mean, I had no thought in my head as I watched this happen on television and in the subsequent weeks that U.S. law enforcement or military agencies had anything to do with it. That never crossed my mind. I never thought there was a false flag or anything like that. I'm not a conspiracist by temperament. I never thought that. And then I interviewed the chief of the Capitol Police.
All right. Sorry, I started repeating there, and
it's all good.
Had a pretty neat clip there. Anyways, so Abby, I think we'll turn to you first since you're obviously a Fed. Can you please tell us what happened?
Where were you on January 6th?
Where was I on Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say that the news that there were Feds there is completely new to me. Never heard this or thought this before. I was shocked when Tucker dropped this piece of information. How is this news?
That's my question.
How is it news?
Yeah.
I think the only thing that was news about this particular clip was the fact that he had the interview specifically with the Capitol Police that apparently never aired. And that, I believe he said it was supposed to air right as he got, I think it was,
oh man,
maybe I heard this wrong, but I thought it was the very night that basically the next night that he was supposed to go on was when that was supposed to air. Maybe I misheard that part. Someone in the chat can fact check me. But either way, he did say that he's going to try to do the interview himself now again, so that we can still get that interview.
I wonder if that'll happen now that he's
that was the breaking part
there.
of that news.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Other breaking news, there was tons of Japanese planes around Hawaii on December 7th, 1942.
What?
What?
Who?
I love it. I love it because I love seeing the Tucker Carlson saga play out post Fox News. It's been absolutely entertaining. It's been so good. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, we all saw Ray Epps, and this is another of those things where it's like I'm always appreciative of more evidence, but I find it funny that some people require so much. No, they don't require so much. This is another one of those things that it's cool. It's like more evidence to the thing we all know. Right. But we also know that there's no amount of evidence that will change certain people's minds on certain subjects. If you didn't already know about Ray Epps, if you didn't already see all of the feds, all of the Antifa boys showing up and literally putting their TikToks out there saying, hey, we're dressing up and causing problems, then, I mean, I don't think this is going to change your mind. It is kind of a nice confirmation, but it's, if you didn't see it already, I don't think I can help you.
At some point, when does the confirmation become a demoralization? At what point do them finally saying you were right this whole time? We screamed at you and told you were stupid for 2 years, and you were right, but nobody cares. Like,
they're studying long vaccine right now. Did you know that? It's another one of those things where it's like it's demoralizing because they're like, yes, now we can admit that it was created in China and that you can talk about it on YouTube now and long COVID. It was actually a long vaccine. Sorry. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like they're not going to pay any price for, you know, multiple years of disinformation and ruining people's lives and things like that. Yeah. They're not going to pay the price for some of my friends who spent 8 to 9 months in a federal hellhole for filming as journalists at the Capitol. Yeah, it is a little bit demoralizing, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
I think so.
Hicktown Honey said Brandon himself could come out and say it was completely staged, and people would say they are making him say it because.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness, I think what's hard is just like, how do you typically handle those people that they just need they need the entire painting to be completely done and framed on the wall before they can actually admit that that the painting is a picture of a tree.
Do you think they would admit it even then?
Nope.
No. You know, this reminds me of our good friend Hillary Clinton.
Very good fun.
Chums. Because there's two parts of any good psyop, right? And the psyop with the I'm sorry, I'm talking about psyops a lot, but there are
right? 2 parts of every good psyop. Learn your skills, kids.
There are. Listen, yeah, this is Boy Scouts 101. The two wings of this work like this, right? With Hillary Clinton, it's let's hang a guy from a tree and shoot him in the chest with a shotgun and make the police say it was a suicide. And you're going to have 2 reactions to this, and both are good for you. Good for being Hillary Clinton in this case, right? And the one reaction is 2 + 2 = 5. You told us it was a suicide. Shotgun was 20 feet away. Guy was hanging from a tree. It was suicide. Okay, that's you win on that front of like, how ridiculous can we get it to the point where people are so deep into our lives that they can't admit it to themselves, because then it would so shift their worldview, their brain would fry, right? So you got that going for you on the one side, and the other side is we know it was not a suicide. Good. We want you to know that we can kill you and say it was a suicide and it's accepted. And we want the people who know what we're up to know that we're so powerful to demoralize them.
It's a power
and I think
play.
It's a power play. So I think this is the same thing. It's like, just like with, you know, COVID or the elections or any of these things, it's like we want the people who know to know that we know they know. We want to make it obvious to them. We want to put a Time magazine article out there saying this is how we rigged the election.
The shadowy cabal.
The shadowy cabal that rigged the election. And then we want the other people to defend it to the death because they cannot handle a worldview shift. So it's like working on 2 fronts in that way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Renaissance Man said PJ has information that will lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton.
Dude, I already thought someone was tampering with my brakes last week, so that's not a lie. I legitimately thought someone was tampering with my brakes last week.
Sounds like a
so thanks.
I think
they weren't, but I had. Sorry, they weren't, because I found out it was a flaw in the Ford manufacturer, but it happened to me twice, and it freaked me the hell out the second time it happened. Just saying.
Screen goes blank.
Good old Ford looking out for us.
I think that this is kind of brings back to something we were saying earlier of it's not enough to just know the truth, right? If we know and we're scared, we're just as controlled as the people who are believing the lie.
Right.
So what do we, at what point do we do something? Not to sound like a Fed.
But to sound like a Fed.
At what point do we storm the
When are you planning? Yeah.
You guys go first. I'll be right back.
Yeah. I'm sure you will. Yeah.
I've been trying, I think, for the last 3-4 months to make my Twitter less about yelling about things we're mad about and more about like, what can we actually do? I'm gonna work my garden. I'm gonna, all the things that I can actually do in my life.
From the Christian perspective, this is going to be unpopular with a lot of people, I think. But I think a lot of times the thing is to not despair, and to not and to just realize that you're going through a time of authoritarianism, that you're going through a time of there isn't anything you can do, and it's not that you shouldn't fight back. It's not that you shouldn't do what you can. But I think that if we make our whole lives just about politics and we're not making it about God, then we're not going to be spared from all suffering, is the point. We have to learn how to suffer. We have to learn how to be praiseful in our suffering. We have to learn how to be to be faithful in an authoritarian regime. And I'm not saying that to like despair or be blackpilled. I'm just saying, like, yes, there's things we can do, but even if you can't, even if all hope is lost, that's just this world. And I don't think our eyes should be
lost.
because hope is never lost, right? But if you think all hope is lost, it's because your eyes are downward. They're perpetually downward.
There are people have survived authoritarian regimes before. And I think that we need to do a little bit more like preparing to actually survive that and come out well, and a little bit less just yelling.
Spend less money on protest signs and more money on food for your basement. That's
right.
the answer.
Yeah. Learning skills that'll actually get you through it.
Plant a garden. Yeah.
Now we've transitioned to the prepper talk.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the reality, you guys are just talking about the sword and the trowel, you know?
Yeah.
It's the idea of we need to be on the defense and the offense, you know, being willing to fight, but also being willing to build. And of course, when I say fight, I mean metaphorically, of course, philosophically, spiritually, you know, and
because I'm not fighting with a sword. I've got shotguns and AR-15s.
That's the only thing I would fight with. You kidding me? No, but honestly, building up our own institutions, because the institutions have lost trust, as we already talked about tonight with the CDC. So we have to build new institutions, you know, and where we can, I think you can even try to take back ground in the institutions that are not completely lost. You know, I think so many people, like you guys mentioned black pill, but let's look at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just handed us a bunch of W's just this these last couple weeks, as well as you know, Roe v. Wade being overturned a little over a year ago. I mean, obviously, there are so many dark things happening, but there are so many good things happening as well. And it's easy to fixate on the drama and the negativity because I mean, it's been proven that we're suckers for it. We get chemically addicted to stress. But the reality is there are good things happening. You know, K-Dub was in the chat earlier. You know, his family's growing. That's a good thing that should be praised and celebrated. And that's the same thing as just the entire era that we live in. We live in an era where we can expose lies quicker than we ever could. You know, so to pretend that everything is lost would be, in my opinion, it would be irresponsible.
We also glossed over, you said building new institutions. We kind of glossed over one of the institutions that is being rebuilt right now, and that's Hollywood. I mean, look at what's failing right now. Elementals is failing. Indiana Jones is failing. Some other third movie I've never heard of is failing. The Flash did atrociously bad. But Sound of Freedom is beating every single thing in the box office.
They just hit 40 million today, or they're supposed to this week or something like that. I mean, that's incredible.
And
but if you like compare it, like I know it's less than Indiana Jones did, like 80 million, right? But if you compare it to budget and all of these things, it is by scale blowing everything out of the water.
Yeah.
We are just starting to see conservative Christian media breaking into the space. It's been a long time coming. It's been a lot of like bad movies with good messages. And we're finally seeing it. I think the Daily Wire is doing it more and more, and others. The Chosen, I think. I didn't watch it, but I heard that was good too.
So there's a lot of people that hate The Chosen. I like it.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy right now.
I know.
That's fair.
There's a lot of mixed messages there, and we've litigated some of that. And honestly, I've got more thoughts that we never even got to because I've sort of changed some thoughts on it anyways. But either way, the point still stands that these independent film producers are starting to make inroads, and that's an incredible thing to see. Nefarious was another great one. Jesus Revolution. I mean, these are multiple movies this year that we can see that are making dents in the space. And of course, you got people like Daily Wire putting out their own content creation machine and stuff like that. And you know, it's awesome to see, you know, just ground being taken back, even if it is slow. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. I think that's a lot of like people in our age groups. You know, we're probably going to spend the rest of our lives just trying to rebuild. You know, and I mean, the ideological opposition spent decades building up to the point where they are at now. And to think that we're just going to take it back with a couple of election cycles is ridiculous.
People are hungry for what we have too. And that's the thing that people need to recognize is like, Had me and Abby built Conspiracy Pilled 4 or 5 years ago, we would have no viewership. Like, just completely honestly, we've done everything wrong on purpose. We've been very open about our faith in a conspiracy show. We've stepped on toes of people, but people I get more messages every week than I ever thought I would get doing a podcast about. I didn't know how great it would be to listen to a conspiracy show that is Christ focused, that is, cares about looking at this from a biblical lens, from a Christian lens. That's a failing proposition a few years ago, but people are hungry for truth, and they're hungry for religion, and they're hungry for Christ. And I think if we recognize that, like, we actually have a moment right now where everything else is failing. We all recognize it's failing. The people who are supporting it are doing so out of fear and just being completely brainwashed, just like the CDC. They're doing it out of like this, I can't go against the narrative because that would make me bad or wrong or stupid or whatever. But everybody else is like, this is crap. Like, they're seeing it fall apart around them, and they want something new. And it's our job to step in and not despair, and to fill those gaps, and to give people answers. People are asking real questions, and they need real answers.
It's a time for prophets.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to explain that further. That's a big statement.
Nope.
Big statement. Nope. Not gonna say. Okay, so we think of the role of a prophet as someone who just tells the future, but most of the prophets in the Bible, that's very little of what they do is talking about the future. Most of what they're doing is talking about the present. Most of what they're doing is saying, this is where we are, and you can believe it or you cannot. Like, this is where we are. This is where we're going. This is the immediate future. It's not even like a prophecy so much as just a prediction. Like, this is the obvious next step. And a lot of times, like with Ezekiel is one I think of a lot, because God's like, I'm sending you to them. They're not going to listen to you. And he just tells them, like, you have to say it. I need you to say it because I need them to hear it, but no one's going to listen to you. And it has to be okay with the prophet, and a few people will, and you say your message. You have to be at peace with a few people gathering around and being like, this is exactly what I needed to hear. And that's the remnant that makes it through.
I think culturally, if we're talking about prophets, Ezekiel makes the most sense of where we're at. Because the other thing that Ezekiel was told was, yeah, look, people are not going to listen to you, and you're not going to spend any time trying to convince them. Yep. You're gonna say the truth. They're gonna reject it. You're gonna shake the dust from your feet and move on to the next person. Somebody's gonna accept it, but you don't have time to coddle everybody and get into these long, drawn out debates with leftists about, chest feeding is this and that and the other, and doing these like long scientific debates. It's like, if they don't know, then you could give them all the arguments in the world. It's just not gonna work. Maybe that's just me. I'm not trying to sound callous, but that's been my belief in this, is not to waste so much time in the Twitter debates, not to waste so much time. When people ask me to debate, I'm like, I have zero interest in debating. I want to speak biblical truth, and I don't want to get dragged down in the mud. Putin said this about Obama once. It's my favorite quote. He said, arguing with Obama is like playing chess with a pigeon who knocks the chess pieces over, shits on the board, and struts around like he won. That's all debating is right now with these people. So, like, for me, I think that that's where we have to be, is to understand that playing chess with pigeons is worthless. Like, move on. It's kind of the Great Commission too. So I don't know. Yeah,
I agree with that. I definitely think that open debate can be a great thing, but not when you are debating with someone who is intellectually being dishonest. But
there's nothing good to come out of it when you're not even arguing the same reality anymore.
This is why the bee is so powerful, because they just tell a joke. They don't sit there and argue about it. They just tell a joke, and if you get it, you get it, and if you don't, you can just sit there and scream.
Yeah,
and it's fine. I think it's the most effective thing in the space.
Yeah,
screeching.
Autistic.
What is a Woman is probably one of the most effective films of the last while, and pretty much the whole thing was a joke. I mean, there was obviously serious documentation done in the film, but for the most part, the whole thing was a joke. I mean, the first at least half of the film was just Walsh traveling around asking the most ridiculous characters the question, what is a woman? Right. And that was enough to, I think, wake so many people up to, oh, okay, got it. So these people are not being intellectually honest, or they're people that are just, being shuffled along because they haven't thought about it more than 30 seconds.
I would argue that was the most effective film in my lifetime. And it was done exactly like you said. It was done by not giving any credibility to the debates and going, well, maybe, and if so. And it was just like, I'm going to ask you a very obvious question. You're not going to be able to answer it. And we're all going to laugh at you.
Yes.
And it affected real change. Like, and when I say real change, look at the laws around abortion or around transgender surgery in Tennessee.
Yep.
Real life change came from someone just saying, look how stupid you are. Let me just, the emperor has no clothes. I don't need to debate the emperor. He's naked.
He's naked.
You can see he's naked. That's the document.
Everyone knows it. Yeah.
The Renaissance of Men said prophets are intermediaries who represent God to the world. Priests are intermediaries who represent the world to God. Just wanted to throw that one out there because I thought that was well worded. And
I like that. Yeah.
A couple of people in the chat. Oh, go ahead, Abby. Sorry.
Renaissance man. So what are kings? Because I would make 3 categories of people. So if prophets are that and priests are that, then what are kings? I'll keep an eye out for it.
Awesome. And
been put on the spot, the Renaissance of Man.
Yeah. Come on, man.
Just checking out Rumble real quick here. It is unkind to have an intelligent conversation with an unarmed person. That was Hicktown Honey. Yep. I agree. That's why they say, awesome. I'll fight you in a battle of wits, but I will not fight an unarmed man.
I'm going to steal that line. I'll give you credit the first 3 times.
Thanks. As long as the first 3 times are when you're in your most viral moments. That's all I ask. So.
That's fair.
Nana C33. Oh, perfect. We'll go to that next. Nana C33 said, for those who believe no evidence is necessary. For those who don't, no evidence is sufficient. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was just going to say Renaissance of Men responded. He said, kings are God's anointed rulers. Which
there
is
we are.
Fairly simplistic. I might say that they are benevolent rulers. Because God himself is the ultimate king. I think human kings were not even part of the original plan, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw that when they wanted Saul, right? He's like, you idiots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're a weird hybrid of priests and prophets, where God didn't actually want those roles to be in the same man.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree, Renaissance Man? Sorry, me and Renaissance Man are just gonna have a podcast, and the rest of you can just.
Abby's been trying to replace me lately, guys.
I'm gonna have to have you guys back on with Will. I think he's got some contrarian takes to some of the stuff you guys said earlier too. It'd be a great discussion, not a debate. Discussion.
I'm not against, and I want to point out, I'm not actually against honest, real debate.
Yeah.
It's the dishonest. You live in one reality, I live in another. That I find fruitless. But yeah, like honest discussion,
PJ.
honest debate.
We get it.
That's what it is.
More often than not, even
shaking in my little space boots.
Space boots. Even in a seemingly well-intended debate, more often than not, people just espouse themselves more deeply in their entrenched view of one particular thing and walk away from an argument with more conviction of their original viewpoint. There's no actual exchange of thought from an open mind. It's, I guess that's left to the interpretation of the viewer, but which I don't think is particularly beneficial most of the time anyway.
Yeah. Well, we have just a little bit of time left, so I want to cover 2 stories just kind of quickly here, without necessarily jumping into another article here. So, first one, I feel like it's already been beaten up by so many other commentators. Just wanted to maybe get your guys' like 30-second take on the whole cocaine White House thing. So, Abby, we'll start with you. I mean, is this even an important story? How should we be feeling about this?
Okay. I don't think I tweeted about this at all because I actually don't care. It's not, I think people would be surprised how many people use cocaine. How many of your favorite conservative commentators use cocaine? It's not a good thing, but it's not the dunk you think it is.
It's a confession. Yeah.
She mentioned the AA group at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So we're going full circle now.
I don't have a problem. personally with cocaine. No,
No, it's one of those things where I think that conservatives, if we recognized how much it was used, we wouldn't want to talk about it, and then maybe we could circle back to needing to talk about it. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I comment on this really quick?
No,
Yeah, sure.
Please.
no.
So you sent us this Not to Be article, and it says sources say cocaine was found in the White House library, but actually it was a storage area, but actually it was near where the vice president's vehicle was parked. And I was trying to make sense of this story forever. There was that video of Hunter Biden doing cocaine in front of the cameras. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah,
Okay, you saw it, Michael? It's very obvious that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
And
Not
everybody's
subtle
like,
at all.
yeah, it was not subtle at all. And I was just thinking, like, yeah, obviously Hunter Biden does cocaine, but this is a guy who will also snort cheese. So it's hard for me to believe he left it behind. Now that I see that it's next to the vice president's vehicle, I'm like, Kamala Harris as a coke whore, does that shock anyone? Like, I don't know. It feels like the story finally made sense. I also don't care.
Yeah.
I just want to make jokes
Could've
about
been
it. I love making. But Abby's right. Like, how many politicians are doing coke fueled orgies?
So many.
Yeah, most. Yeah.
I think the reason it's so inconsequential of an article or a story, not that we shouldn't be talking about it, but it's like, Hunter could have snorted it straight off of Kamala's belly, and it wouldn't make a difference to how anything is run. Nobody would be held accountable.
This is a guy who literally filmed himself doing exactly that so many times.
Yeah, I gotta throw out Renaissance a man's comment. He said, "I missed that video of him snorting coke because of all the footage of him weighing crack rocks and banging fishes."
Nice.
Yeah.
It got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
So
Welcome,
there's clearly
Susie Q,
no
by the way. We see you.
responsibility being held.
They desensitized us to Hunter Biden's coke addiction to the point where it doesn't matter anymore because we've seen years of real footage of him doing every crime imaginable, and
nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Consequence.
No consequences.
We bring up these things that matter to us, like they matter in our worldview. We wouldn't want to vote for Trump if his son was a cokehead. Maybe we would.
They don't care.
Right.
But they don't care. So it doesn't matter. I mean, we can yell about it all day, and it's not going to change anybody's vote.
All we care about is what the heck the plane lady saw.
Yes,
that's what I
want to
care
talk about.
about.
This.
So
Yes.
please, you know what, PJ, we'll start with you and just what's happening.
Because you're
here?
afraid
What
to
did she
start.
see?
You're
Give some
afraid.
context.
I
to
am.
this
I'm
story.
afraid to start with Abby.
So yeah, for people who didn't see it, there's this lady who freaked out saying that's not a real person trying to get off a plane. They had to redirect the plane. Carrot Top was on this plane apparently and was posting about it. Oh yeah, there's videos of TikToks of Carrot Top.
He the one she was pointing at?
That's
That
my
actually makes
question.
more sense now.
Once I heard Carrot Top was on the plane, I was like, oh yeah,
He
he's
doesn't
not
really look real.
a human. He doesn't
Chucky
look real
doll.
at all. He looks like a Chucky doll on steroids. Yeah, it's kind of freaky.
So
what
yeah,
happened
an
to that
American
guy?
Airlines flight. This woman's freaking out, pointing to the back of the plane, saying, "He's not real."
Right. But what's
your
weird
take,
about
PJ?
it? What's weird about it is that she doesn't no one knows who she is. I've been trying to find out. I've been reaching out to people, being like, "Can you help me find this woman? I want to have her on our show. I want to ask her what she saw." So there's all these theories going around. People are saying she does this thing with her two fingers. She's pointing like this a lot, and at one point she has her other hand down, so she's doing the as above, so below. So there's this whole theory that it's a big distraction. There was also a UK boxer who did the exact same thing, a man. That guy's not real, freaking out trying to get off a plane.
Wait,
I don't know what to make of it. Like, if you... There's the answer.
Finally.
She saw a bird. She saw or a platypi.
Yeah. One of those.
I don't know what to make of it. I don't. She doesn't seem crazy. Like, people pointed out that the physiognomy art, is that how you say that word?
Physiognomy.
Basically, she doesn't look disheveled and whatever. She's semi-attractive and fit and takes care of herself. So she's not a person we would normally look at and instantly assume is a little off her rocker.
Right.
But she seems genuinely scared. I don't know what to make of it. It's either like even the people are pointing out the Baphomet thing kind of going on there. I'm like, what's the point of it? Is this like, what's the distraction? Is this part of Project Bluebeam? Is this I'm like pushing the idea that the lizard people are finally here? Is David Icke's, dreams coming true? I don't know what to make of it. I'm still digging into it. So Abby's probably got a better take than I do.
She saw a bird.
She saw a bird.
No, I agree that she doesn't seem crazy. She seems like she's fighting herself because she knows she looks crazy. She's mad because she knows she looks crazy.
That's the best way to put it.
And as any sane person would in that situation, but she's if you listen to what she's saying, she's like, I don't care if you guys all stay here and get killed by this thing. I'm getting off the plane.
Yeah.
Mm.
She's not like trying to make anyone believe her. She's just explaining to herself why she's getting off the plane.
And that's why I don't buy the acting thing. That's a hard bit of acting to do.
It's intricate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Susie Q said apparently she saw a demon in a guy.
Yeah. I would believe that.
I've seen a demon possessed person and I would have gotten off the damn plane had that been the case.
I've been on a plane with a demon possessed person. It's a good
Renaissance Man said I saw footage of the dude from another angle. He looked super sus. Yeah. It just makes me think of there's another podcast that in fact, if you guys don't know it already, I'm sure Conspiracy Pilled would do well to know about the Haunted Cosmos podcast. They do a great job with just talking through sort of urban legends from a biblical standpoint, and it's super interesting. And I was just thinking about some of the Men in Black kind of people that they've described in some of their episodes before. And I don't know, maybe the lizard people walk among us. But Michael, what did you think about this whole story?
The way I see it, just with a sound mind, there are two options. Either she's entirely schizophrenic and having an episode and it's not like she's not well, or she's, in my opinion, not correct when she says that he's not real. Because clearly whatever she's seeing, the apparition, if it's a demonic presence, a lizard person, he's clearly real.
Yeah.
Right.
He's just not what he appears to be or in the bounds of what we might consider an ordinary human. And so if that's the case and she is correct in her discernment, she still kind of said the wrong thing, but that's just semantics. That doesn't
that's even
semantics
more...
she's freaking out. But or because people can't believe when they see something real that it is in fact real.
That's true.
That's even more compelling because she doesn't have a prior conceived. She's not like, that's a lizard person. She's not like, that's a demon possessed. But she's like, that's not real because it's the only thing she could think of. Like, that's the only category
she has to believe it's not real to try to hold on to her sanity almost, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to discredit her by saying that.
I don't think you are at all.
She did, in fact, see something real, and we don't have enough information to discern what that may have been.
Yeah.
I would even take it a step further. Even if she was on shrooms, she saw something real. That's the thing we've pointed out. These people are saying clockwork elves. The wrong Christian take is to say they're hallucinating. The correct one is to say they are opening portals to demons, and it's very obvious that they're all seeing the same being. That's not a hallucination.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on that with Louis Unget, who wrote a great book called Return of the Dragon. And it's all about just the idea that psychedelics are, they could be found in biblical times. And it definitely seems to open up the door to some demonic properties. Susie Q in the chat said there was a video of a guy who claimed to be the guy she was talking about. He had face and occultic tattoos, and he called himself Lucifer. So that's interesting.
I don't know if I buy that.
I don't know. Shara Joel said, so she doesn't look like a crazy cat lady? No, she didn't.
No, she doesn't.
No.
She looked pretty ordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a crazy cat lady, so...
I was going to say, I host a podcast with a crazy cat lady, so I know what they look like.
Okay, in my defense, my husband... the cats are my husband's. He's the crazy cat lady. I'm just here.
See, I read that wrong. I didn't hear apostrophe S. I thought the cats
are my husband.
I heard the exact same thing. I was like, you're crazier than we thought.
Yeah.
I've married all of the cats. That makes me not crazy because they're my husbands.
Because they're my husbands.
Yes.
No, My husband, who's a real person, he's in the chat. He's not for sale, is my husband. He has.
That's how you know someone's real, is when when you have to qualify. They're a very real person.
They're real.
Yeah.
Did your friend also ask? Were you actually asking for a friend?
Yeah. Anyway, please. Can we move on?
The guy I saw in the video had a green hoodie, didn't have facial tattoos, and he looked worried about the scene being made.
Huh.
Someone, and it's hard to tell what's real and what's not, because some people are saying, like, oh, I was on that flight and the guy's eyes blinked sideways and things like that. But I mean, people can say anything on the internet. It's hard to qualify. So I don't know.
Very true. We're going to jump ahead into Rumble, read a couple last chats here. Hicktown Honey said they want us to register all our firearms for control, but can't track down whose drugs are at our nation's capital. Well,
sure
there's no
exactly
cameras there. There's no cameras there.
No cameras.
There's no surveillance. There's nothing. So it's very complex.
That's the point, isn't it? Is that they know exactly whose it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
100%.
irrelevant because there will be no consequences.
Why do you think that the location changes every day? Because it's just another rabbit trail for you to follow. So you're not,
not looking
answering the very obvious question
like,
of they are the ones who found it. They've known where it's at the whole time and who put it there.
Don't focus on Ukraine and the fact that we're sending them like weapons of mass destruction. But Not for Sale said the combination between talking about conspiracies and real things that have happened from a biblical standpoint is such a powerful thing. Then Nana C33 said, my younger brother lived to argue, not debate. Argue. Our older sister did not figure that out until we were all adults. Then Kel17C, I have a running joke in my friend group that every new person is fake until I have met them, and they need to renew their real status annually.
Our audience has decided that I am not real unless observed. So I don't even exist between podcasts.
So does that mean that Abby hasn't met a bird yet? Is that the issue?
I'm sorry? I haven't met one.
Met a bird?
She's changed their batteries.
You wind them up a little, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the secret. You guys ready for the secret?
Please.
Not all birds are not real. But some of them are not real.
We take more flack for the bird jokes than literally anything we've ever done. We've said some of the most offensive things you could think of on our show. And the most mad that people have gotten at us was for a meme that said bird stands for B, government, I, drone. It was hilarious, and people were so mad at us. I'm like, dude, like I couldn't make it more obvious that this is like a joke at this point.
I haven't been on Reddit for a few years.
It's a joke
now.
with truth, though, right? Yeah,
yeah, But my favorite thing on Reddit was the subreddit of birds aren't real.
Yes,
that's easily the best time on there.
Yeah,
it's such a good joke. Okay, we live in the funniest timeline. Like everything's really dark and it's all going to crap, right? But also, I didn't expect the end of the world to be so hilarious.
Yeah, that's incredibly true.
The best true conspiracies are also the most outrageous and hilarious, because they actually are turning the frogs gay. Like that's if you can't find the humor in they're turning the freaking frogs gay, I can't help you. It's both.
I think it's the delivery,
awful and hilarious. Yeah.
John's delivery is what really makes that special.
It sure
I
does.
don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
I'm so glad that you had that queued up so that I didn't even have to do anything.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, PJ. You're now our producer. You have to be on every Monday night now.
Take him.
Well, speaking of which, let's go ahead and have you guys shout out your work. So, Abby, where can people find you to keep up with everything you're doing?
I am at Abby the Lib on Twitter. And you can find me at conspiracypill.com. All the links for both of us are at conspiracypill.com. That's probably the easiest.
Awesome. Well, PJ, where can people find you?
Yeah, same thing. We do our show every Wednesday and Thursday night. I'm more active on Instagram, but I do most of the Conspiracy Pilled stuff on Instagram and TikTok. So just go to conspiracypill.com, click every link, follow everything. That's the only answer. If you follow most of them and leave us a 4-star review, you're wrong. So follow everything 5-star reviews, and then we're friends.
That's the Michael, where can people find you?
This summer, I'm studying a lot of John Wesley, but also traveling. So last weekend, I was on the East Coast, and in another week and a half, I'll be on the West Coast, which is kind of a crazy thought. So
they can't find you.
You can't find me.
No finding.
Right.
Undetectable.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate all you new listeners, especially on Rumble. Feel free to give us a follow. We do these lives every Monday night, 8 p.m. Central Time, 8:05-ish Central Time. So feel free to join us, and we do our best to read as much of your chats as possible and have great conversations like this. But Abby, PJ, thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you, audience, for listening, and we'll see you next time.